I have spent the majority of this past year chipping away at a ranking and retrospective of Pixar's first 25 years of feature filmmaking. It wasn't until about a month into the project that the teaser for Luca was released. I initially decided against waiting for it to come out to include as part of the project, confident that I would be finished by the time it came out. Nearly 4 months have passed since then. I have only managed to crack the top 10, and Luca is now available on Disney Plus. That project is still on the way, so please stay tuned for that in the future. Since I'm still working on the ranking, I reconsidered whether I should work Luca into it while it's still fresh and new. I decided the determining factor would have to be if I thought Luca was good enough to justify working it into a project that it was never intended to be a part of, and something worth having to rework the entire ranking as a whole. And I think you can probably guess where I fall, considering that I'm not including it as part of that future video. I had neither high or low expectations for Luca, especially after having watched most of, if not all of the studio's output by the time I saw the trailer. It looked to me to be one of the average and forgettable Pixar movies. I actually thought it looked just like a Pixar short extended to a feature length. And I know that Pixar trailers usually aren't good, but this one wasn't even granting me a benefit of the doubt. It just looked fairly generic to me, which has been the big issue and I feel many others have had with Pixar for some time now. If there's anything you can say about the best Pixar films, it's that they're decidedly not generic. They're all singular creative visions that'll stand the test of time. It is a strange thing, but Pixar's issue hasn't been that their films aren't good, it's that they've been merely passable. They've been fine, but they're hollow and they're not terribly memorable anymore. Luca is a film I truly have so little to say about that I can't bring myself to add more work on the Pixar ranking for it. I will admit the first half hour or so had me hooked. I thought the early bonding scenes between Luca and Alberto were charming. I keep hearing how influenced by Hayao Miyazaki Pixar claims to be, and this is really the first film of theirs where that influence felt somewhat palpable. This movie's early scenes had that breezy, relaxed vibe, where you have down-to-earth, innocent characters navigating a subtle but fantastical world, and those fantasy sequences were really exuberant and beautiful. I kinda wished the film revolved more around them. Sadly, the lion's share of the movie is pretty boilerplate. They enter a contest to win a prize, they meet an energetic character who's a girl, there are Luca's disapproving parents who go searching for him, there's a one-dimensional bully character and his two grunting sidekicks they have to overcome. There's a whole thread about how the human world doesn't accept the fish creatures, which really doesn't amount to anything. There's a fallout and reconciliation between the two best friend characters, and everything winds up happily ever after. Luca winds up being about as generic as it looked and honestly fairly undercooked. The pacing was weirdly rushed, the characters were all thin, the sequence of events was predictable. I thought some of the music was nice, and the animation on some of those fantasy sequences, again, were visually arresting and better helped to convey the themes of breaking free from conventions better than most of the film did, but that really is it. Luca is one of the average and forgettable Pixar movies. And if you'd like to know where I would rank it, I guess it'll go between what I have at numbers 17 and 18. I'm not going to say what those movies are, you're going to have to wait for that, but whatever, I guess that's where I'll put it. Luca is not really what I wanted the subject of this video to be, though. I just don't find the film interesting enough to talk about at length, either in its own video or as part of an assessment of the studio's greater output. Without getting too much into what will eventually be in the ranking, while discussing Soul, I pondered the question of whether that film, which I enjoyed with some reservations, would be a sign of where Pixar would be headed in the future. Next year we'll see the release of a film called Turning Red, another directorial debut for someone who made a successful short, and Lightyear, a Toy Story spin-off revolving around Buzz. I can't speak to either of these films since they're not out yet, but the slim promotional material for the former film looks indistinguishable from anything that the Disney Animation Studios is making, and the latter film is yet another spin-off of a beloved franchise that I have no excitement for. Whatever interest I had in Luca was directly linked to this question I had regarding the studio as a whole, and I felt more than anything would give me the answer I sought. And sadly, I feel it has. Pixar films just aren't an event anymore. Hell, even the Disney company itself seems to think so, considering they dropped Onward, Soul, and Luca in their streaming service without the prestige of a paywall. The studio isn't dead, and it isn't dying. It's stagnating. It's languishing. I'm sure this will be something I no doubt touch on in the ranking, but Pixar is almost the perfect cautionary tale of being a victim of its own success. Their first 15 years of film are front-loaded with boundary-pushing masterpieces and cars, each pushing against some kind of grain, either narratively, technologically, and often both. Hell, their first 3 films after being bought out by Disney, Ratatouille, WALL-E, and Up, I feel were the studio's way of pushing back against themselves. But what do you do when there are no more hills to climb, no more glass ceilings to crash, or boundaries to push? Pixar and Disney Animation's technological capacities, the primary limitation of those earlier films from both studios, are now limitless. They can produce the most exquisitely beautiful photorealistic animation on the planet. They can create whatever they want. But what stories will they tell? What emotions will they take us through? What is there left to prove? The latter studio isn't burdened by this expectation because it never modeled its brand off of it. Pixar, however, did. And now it must live in that shadow, continuing to produce streamlined, average films that don't take risks for the foreseeable future, now a victim of the high expectations that they themselves set 26 years ago.